Hello, this is Claus Jensen bringing you another Bent Larsen game from the year 1967. After Larsen's win in the Interzonal, he traveled to Mallorca to play a very strong tournament there. And he won it convincingly, making it 4 in a row after wins in Havana, Winnipeg and Sousse. He won half a point ahead of Smyslov and Botvinnik. Portisch came 4th and Gligoric ended 5th. The game you're about to watch is from round 8 against the Hungarian Super Grandmaster Lajos Portisch. Portisch belonged to the world elite in the 60s, in the 70s, and he still made very good results in the 80s as well. Portisch and Larsen are almost the same age, and comparing their careers, I think one could say that Larsen peaked at a higher level than Portisch did. But the Hungarian was clearly more consistent over time, and he was able to stay at the top level for longer than Larsen. Their 54 encounters resulted in 26 wins for Portisch, 14 wins for Larsen, and 15 draws. Chess-wise, they both had a positional style, which is very clear when we see this game. Actually, the opening and middle game is not that interesting, but there are a few instructive middle game plans in the game, and the end game is very instructive indeed. So I think it's time to go on with the game. Larsen is white, Portisch is black. It's Mallorca 1967, and we start off with c4 from Larsen, and we are soon heading for a Queen's Gambit. And I'll just play through some of the opening moves, not that interesting at all. And I think that when we look at the position right now here, I think it's clear that Portisch has reached equalization from the opening, and now he starts a maneuver to swap off his knight. This, in fact, for this bishop. And what he does now is he starts to play. He plays b4 here. The intention is to clear the fields, the squares d5 and the e4, because then he can play knight d5, threatening the queen, the bishop, which has to retreat to g3, and then he can play knight e4 and swap off that bishop on g3. So that's the middle game plan that Portisch executes here. Larsen retreats his knight, is forced to, and then comes knight d5, as I said just before, and bishop g3, knight e4, knight d2, and knight takes on g3. And now Portisch has succeeded with his plan, and now he has the pair of bishops, and Larsen also has a slightly worse pawn structure on the king side. Rook f8, rook f to c8 followed, and knight dc4. And now Larsen here, he has a middle game plan as well. What he wants to do is to exchange the bishops, the light square bishops. He wants to exchange his e2 bishop for black's b7 bishop, because Larsen's bishop on e2 is a little passive, and its counterpart on b7 is very well placed. So Larsen is preparing to be able to play bishop f3 at some point to be able to exchange those bishops. In the game follows rook c5, and then Larsen can start a little forced sequence. He plays e4, forcing the knight back to f6, and then he plays knight d7, forcing rook c7, and then he takes on f6, and Portisch takes with the bishop, and then e5 here is opening up the f3 b7 diagonal with tempo. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong arrow. Try this one instead. So bishop has to retreat to e7, and now Larsen plays b3. He's protecting this knight. It was only protected by the bishop, but this bishop is going to f3, so he has to protect the knight before moving bishop f3. King f8 follows. Portisch is centralizing his king, and then bishop f3. Bishop takes, g takes, and now both sides have completed their strategic plans of exchanging some of the light pieces, and we're now heading for an endgame where Portisch has the bishop and Larsen has the knight. And there are of course 2 rooks on both sides, and 6 pawns on each side. So we're heading for an endgame. King e8, further centralizing the king. Rook d2, rook d8, rook fd1, rook takes, rook d7. And here Larsen rightly judges that he needs to keep a rook on the board to have any chance of winning this game. So he plays rook c2, rook d3 followed, f4 protecting the f3 pawn, bishop c5 trying to activate the bishop, king f1 centralizing the king, king d7, king e2, rook d4, knight d2, king c6, knight f3 threatening the rook, retreating to d7, knight g5, attacking the h6 pawn, which has to h7 pawn, sorry, which have to move to h6, and then the knight is in a nice square on e4. Rook d5, protecting the bishop on c5. a4. Here it's of course not possible for Portisch to take en passant here, because then would follow b4 and the bishop is pinned and would be lost. So that's not an option for Portisch here. So he has to play king b6 to unpin his bishop on c5. f3 followed, and a5 was played from Portisch. And now we are we are in an endgame, and I would like to ask you, how would you evaluate this endgame? Just spend a few seconds to think of what this endgame is all about. Okay, let's have a closer look at the position. First of all, material is even. The only imbalance is that white has a knight and black has the bishop, as we spoke of before. Both rooks are controlling an open file. This one is controlling the d file, and the white is controlling the c file. The queenside pawns are positioned in a very static way, because they are blocked, and no movement is possible. On the king side, we have a little imbalance. White's pawn structure is a little weaker than the black pawn structure, but it's not so bad that black is able to create a pass pawn. The white king is a little more centralized than the black king, but they are both protecting some of the squares that the opponent's rook would like to use to enter the opponent's position. So, for example, the king on e2 is protecting d3 and d2 and d1, so the black rook cannot enter the white position. So I think when summing up on all this, on surface you would say that this endgame looks very equal. But in fact, Portisch has just made a mistake by playing a6 to a5. I mean, a6 to a5. And why is that? I think that after a5, White is actually having the clearly better endgame, and he has very good practical chances of winning this endgame. And the reason why is that I think this is a perfect example of an endgame where the knight is so much stronger than the bishop. I'll just remove all these here. This knight is so much stronger than this bishop, and the reason why is that the position is fairly closed. So the knight is more mobile than the bishop is, and this means that the knight can move anywhere on the board and be able to put threats on the weaknesses in the black camp. This is not the case with this bishop. The only active diagonal is the one that is on right now. It's blocked by the kingside pawns here and on the queenside pawn, on b4 and a5, and so this bishop is not able to attack any weaknesses in the white camp because the queenside pawns here are on light squares, while this bishop is dark squared. And if it should attack some of the kingside pawns on the white kingside pawns at any time, they would be able to move to light squares. So this bishop is not very strong, but this knight here, which I said can move anywhere on the board, can attack weaknesses in the black camp, and these weaknesses are primarily those two pawns here, but also the a5 pawn, which has now become a weakness because it's at this time it's protected by the king, but as we shall see later, it will be difficult for the king to keep protection of the a5 pawn. And these two pawns are of course unprotected at this time, and if at any time the f pawn moves forward, then the e6 pawn will be a weakness as well. So in fact this is an endgame that offers white some good chances of winning, but of course he has to play accurately to get a chance. If we go back to the game now, then then Larsen played rook c1 here, and Portisch played bishop e7, allowing the white rook to go into the black camp with the rook c8. But the alternative for Portisch was to play something like king c6, but then knight c6, d6 is possible, and the f7 pawn is hanging, attacking one of the weaknesses in the black camp. And black cannot take the knight on d6 because the bishop on c5 is pinned. As we can see, it's pinned by the c1 rook. So king c6 is not working here, so he plays bishop e7, allowing the Larsen to play rook c8. And here, a possibility for Portisch is to play rook g8. But then follows knight d6, and here the f7 pawn is hanging, and if he plays f5, then rook takes, bishop takes, knight e8, attacking the g7 pawn, which can move to g6, but then knight g7 and the e6 pawn is hanging. And here we can see that the mobility of the knight is clearly outclassing the bishop. And the bishop is not able to protect the light squared pawn on e6, and so this is clearly one for white. So instead of rook d8, Portisch plays rook d7, preparing to protect his pawns on f7 and g7. And now Larsen plays rook g8. Attacking g8, one of the weaknesses in the black camp. Portisch plays f5, attacking the knight. And here Larsen can take en passant on f6. And if bishop takes, then rook e8. I think white should still keep his knight on the board, not exchange it for the bishop. And here now the e6 pawn is attacked, and again white has a clearly better position. But Larsen didn't play e takes f6 en passant. He played knight d2, and we shall soon see why he did that, because then followed bishop c5, protecting the g pawn. Rook c8, now threatening to play knight c4 check, and then the king has to move, and the c5 bishop is falling. So Portisch has to play rook c7, and then follows knight c4 check anyway. And now we can see that now the a5 pawn is attacked, and black is not able to protect it here. He has to play king b7, and then followed rook e8, attacking yet another weakness in the black camp. And two possibilities available for Portisch, but none of them are very good. Rook e7 is of course a way to protect the e6 pawn, but then simply follows knight takes a5 check, king c7, rook a8, and this is of course now the a5, the a pawn has fallen, and white has a protected passed pawn, and he's winning this endgame. The other way to protect the e6 pawn is to play bishop e7, and this was what Portisch did in the game. And then followed rook g8, attacking another weakness in the black pawn. And as you can see, all black can do is react to the attacks from white here. He could play g5 here, but then Larsen would simply play rook g6, attacking both weaknesses on h6 and e6. The other possibility is to play bishop c5, which was the move that Portisch made. And then knight takes a5 check, and it seems very complicated, but after all these attacks on the weaknesses in the black camp, in the end Portisch was not able to parry all of the threats in a satisfactory manner, and now he has lost his a pawn, and he's of course also losing the game now. King b6 followed, knight c4 check, king c6, rook e8, attacking e6, rook e7 is covering the e6 pawn, rook b8 followed, rook d7, knight a5 check, king c7, rook b7 check, king c8, rook b5, attacking the bishop, and after rook c7, knight b7, then Portisch resigns the game. The threat here is knight d6 check. A possible continuation could have been bishop e7, knight d6 check. Only now Larsen is willing to give up his knight for the bishop, because now after exchange on d6, rook c2 check, king d1, rook c3, rook takes, then white is having a clearly won rook endgame here. Black is not able to stop the d6 and the a5 pawns. So only here, after winning the pawn on a5, then only there Larsen would give up his good knight for the bishop. So I think this is a very instructive endgame. It shows clearly that in this kind of position, the knight is superior to the bishop. It's clear that in many other endgames, when we have more open positions, then the bishop could easily be superior to the knight because it's able to operate more long distance. But when the position is closed, then the ability to operate long distance does not exist for the bishop, and then the knight is far more powerful, as it can jump over pawns and be able to attack on squares where the bishop has no chance. So this was an example of the knight outpowering the bishop, and I hope you enjoyed this instructive endgame and also some of the middle game plans. And I hope to see you on my blog at klausjensen.com. Thanks for now.